Okay, picture this. You're just going about your normal day. It's noon, the sun is high in the sky, and suddenly, things start to change. Within minutes, the sun completely vanishes, and your entire city is plunged into pitch black midnight. I know, it sounds literally like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but it's an actual, scientifically documented phenomenon known as an atmospheric blackout. In this explainer, we're going to dive into the science behind these events, because seriously, how exactly does the sun just vanish at noon?
To figure out what causes this, we actually need to travel back a bit to a pretty gripping event that happened on May 19, 1780. Across Boston, stretching all the way over New England and up into Canada, what started as just a typical cloudy morning suddenly morphed into an absolute nightmare for the people living there.
We have this amazing first-hand account from First Lady Abigail Adams. She wrote that the heavens were covered with Egyptian darkness, which is a direct reference to the biblical plagues, by the way. She noted that you couldn't even discern objects right next to you. You have to remember, without modern meteorology, people literally thought Judgment Day had arrived. People were dropping to their knees to pray in the streets. So let's break down the timeline of how this actually unfolded, based on eyewitness accounts from a local guy named Jeremy Belknap. Around 10 a.m., the regular clouds suddenly took on this really sickening yellow tint. By 11 a.m., the sky turned orange, then red, and right at noon, it shifted to brown, and then just went pitch black. It was so completely dark that folks had to light candles just to do basic indoor chores. Now, in the days following this terrifying darkness, the theories were absolutely wild. You had some experts suspecting massive volcanic eruptions. Others thought maybe a passing comet had somehow messed with the atmosphere. And of course, a lot of people just believed it was a literal biblical plague. But obviously, today we have rigorous scientific tools to figure this out. So let's look at the actual physics, starting with our first major suspect. Let's fast forward a century, to March 19, 1886, over in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Right at 3 p.m., residents reported this incredibly strange black mist approaching from the west. In the span of just 5 minutes, this mist completely rolled over the city and plunged Oshkosh into a darkness that felt like midnight. The whole thing lasted for about 10 minutes before just moving on.
Hearing about a really brief, intense 10-minute darkness immediately brings to mind our first major scientific suspect, right? A solar eclipse. The orbital mechanics here are super straightforward. The moon passes directly between the Earth and the sun, casting a deep shadow. If you happen to be standing in the path of that shadow, day briefly turns to night. It perfectly fits the profile of sudden, temporary daytime darkness. But here's the thing. Normally, an eclipse is beautiful. The horizon looks like a 360-degree sunset, the stars come out, it's great. But imagine a cloudy day eclipse. If thick clouds are already hiding the sun, you get absolutely zero visual warning. The world just violently drops into pitch black terror. It is highly likely that a lot of historic dark days were simply cloudy eclipses.
So, mystery solved for Oshkosh then, right? Well, not quite. Because of orbital math, solar eclipses are highly predictable. We can map them backwards and forwards in time with absolute perfect precision. And the math tells us that exactly 0 solar eclipses occurred over Wisconsin on March 19, 1886. So we have to entirely rule out an eclipse and investigate a brand new weather suspect. And that brings us to suspect number 2, severe supercell thunderstorms. Remember that weird black mist described in Oshkosh? Well, in meteorology, a mist is really just a low-hanging cloud. It's incredibly probable that this was an intensely dense, isolated supercell acting almost like a giant, dark curtain being pulled over the city.
And we actually have modern proof that storms can do this. On April 30th, 1971, a sudden, heavy daytime darkness fell right over Jacksonville, Florida. And this blackout perfectly coincided with a National Weather Service tornado warning for a spontaneous supercell. These extremely towering thunderheads, especially the ones capable of dropping tornadoes, hold so much water and dirt that they effectively become an impenetrable wall blocking out solar radiation.
Okay, so does a massive supercell solve our 1780 New England mystery? Actually, no. You see, New Englanders were intimately familiar with severe thunderstorms. They knew what those looked like. This blackout was entirely different. For one, it swallowed a massive geographical area, and it lingered for hours, way past the point when any normal storm would have just cleared out.
To really crack the 1780 case, we have to look closely at the bizarre physical clues that were left behind. Eyewitnesses at the time reported rain that was filled with a dirty, almost ash-like soot, and the smells were reportedly overpowering. Some folks said the air smelled like chimneys on fire,
while others noted the scent of swamps burning, heavily mixed with the aroma of sea salts. Now, if those clues sound eerily familiar, it's because we've basically seen them ourselves. Think back to 2020, out in San Francisco, when the sky turned that really apocalyptic orange from wildfires. Or even in 2023, when New York City was just choked by a sickly yellow hue rolling down from the Canadian smoke. That soot in 1780 strongly suggested wildfire smoke, but scientists didn't have the absolute, undeniable proof until 2008. Using dendrochronology, which is just a fancy word for studying tree rings, researchers analyzed old-growth forests up in Ontario, and they found the ultimate smoking gun. Massive, physical fire scars perfectly dated to 1780. A completely colossal forest fire had raged through there. But that still leaves us with a lingering question. Places like New York in 2023 and San Francisco in 2020 experienced incredibly heavy smoke, sure, but they didn't experience total, pitch black night during the middle of the day. So what exactly is the atmospheric recipe required to upgrade a yellow sky into a complete, paralyzing, historic blackout? Well, atmospheric scientists now know it requires a really precise, almost chaotic recipe. First, you need massive amounts of dense wildfire smoke lofted way high up in the atmosphere. Then, beneath that smoke, you need thick, low-level fog or maybe a supercell rolling in. When you stack all these varied layers together, you completely strip the atmosphere of its solar transparency. It just blocks everything. And the crazy part is that we know this terrifying combination still happens today. Look at July 20th, 2018. A sudden midday darkness totally engulfed communities in the Sakha region of Siberia. Keep in mind, during the summer in Siberia, it is almost always daylight, yet the sky went completely black. Residents were literally making jokes on social media about the apocalypse arriving. So yeah, in 2018, human nature hadn't really changed much since 1780. But because this happened in 2018, we didn't have to wait centuries to solve it. Satellite imagery of the region confirmed our exact atmospheric blackout formula in real time. The images showed massive plumes of dense wildfire smoke churning directly into an area that was already blanketed by unusually thick, high-altitude storm clouds. Those stacked layers worked together to perfectly block out the sun.
So, we've brilliantly solved the 1780 New England mystery with massive forest fires and Oshkosh with a really dense supercell. But the atmosphere isn't quite done with us yet. Because as we keep looking through historical records, we find some deeply unsettling atmospheric anomalies. It turns out, not every historic dark day fits nicely into our neat little boxes of eclipses, storms, or wildfire smoke.
Take this genuinely bizarre event from September 18, 1938, over the Yamal Peninsula. Witnesses there described the familiar yellow to black progression in the sky. But incredibly, this blackout entirely disrupted local radio signals. Meteorologists couldn't even contact the authorities. And what's weirder, there was zero rain, zero dust, and absolutely zero smell of smoke or soot. It just went dark, jammed the radios, and then cleared right up. Or how about this incredibly eerie maritime account from June 2, 1802? A sailor navigating out on the Pacific Ocean reported thick, pitch-black clouds rolling in right overhead, blocking out the sun completely. Yet, the water below remained perfectly, completely calm, and there was absolutely zero wind. It was completely missing the turbulent pressure shifts and raging winds that define a normal severe storm system. But honestly, the ultimate unsolved puzzle has to be this one from Hernando, Brazil on April 11, 1860. According to historical researchers, it was a completely cloudless, perfectly clear day. Yet right at noon, the sun essentially just went black. The entire environment plunged into such a deeply profound darkness that the planet Venus became brightly visible right in the middle of the day. Now, I know you are probably screaming eclipse at your screen right now. A totally clear sky turning dark, come on, it has to be an eclipse. But let's run that orbital math check just one more time. In the year 1860, total solar eclipses occurred on January 23rd and July 18th. There was absolutely no eclipse on April 11th, making this an incredible and frankly terrifying scientific anomaly.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely tantalizing puzzle. Since eclipses were absolutely ruled out by the mathematics, and there wasn't a single cloud, storm, or plume of smoke in the sky, what could possibly block out the sun entirely on a perfectly clear day in 1860? Could something else, out in deep space, have cast a massive shadow over the Earth? It really leaves you wondering exactly what else is hiding in the skies above us, just waiting to turn day into night.